Coucou, voici le printemps. Coucou, le beau soleil brillait. Coucou, et les yeux des filles.
Well, my full name's Clarence Eugene Baker. My mom and dad, my dad had an uncle Clarence, and my mother had an uncle Clarence. So they said, well, let's call him Clarence. I was born in Hornell, New York. Not Cornell, it's Hornell. My parents lived in it was outside of Arkport, New York. It was about 10 miles from Hornell. We lived on a farm house. It belonged to my grandma and grandpa's house, or grandma and grandpa, I'm sorry. And their house was right across the street from us. They owned this one, and they had quite a bit of farmland on it. It was right up against a hill. I remember the hill, they used to grow strawberries on it, but I've done a lot of picking strawberries when I was older. Anyways, we went home to Arkport after a hospital, and my brother, she had a boy, which would be my brother. He was 4 years older than me. Lee, his name was Leland. That was after my grandpa's name, Leland Stanford Baker. Anyways, they were glad to see me, and that's where I was raised for about 10 years. It was all farmers out there. The farms were, they were probably, my grandfather's farm was 200 acres. So, it was pretty big. And they lived right up against a forest area. We call it the woods. And our little place, which was across the street where I lived, it was just right across the street. Eventually it became a highway, and it was pretty busy because people go. There's the only road that people took to go to Cancerega, which was about 15 miles away, another little town. So, yeah, it was a lot of farmland, farm people around, but they were far between each other. It's not. We couldn't just walk to the neighbors. We had to go pretty much a half mile or so before we saw another farmhouse. So, yeah, my parents had another baby. He's 18 months younger than me. His name was Lynn. He don't like to hear it, but it was. They wanted a girl and they wanted Linda, and that's what his name was. They come up with Lynn when they saw it was a boy. So I don't even know if he knows that. Yeah, he knows it. Everybody kids him about it. But Lee died about, actually, it was about 3 years ago. He died, he had a stroke. He lived in Las Vegas with my younger brother, Lynn. And I go visit him a lot, mainly because they had casinos there. And as June would know, she says, when I die, you're going to go to a casino. I say, yeah, I'll probably live in casinos more than I do home. I better bleep that one out. We was all the time doing silly things and going up in the barn, walking the beams and jumping off in the hay. And at nighttime, we'd flash a light in a pigeon's eyes, so we'd just walk up to the pigeon and grab it, because they were blinded by the lights and they just stay still, So we had pigeons, and we had a really great life on the farm. I liked it a lot, but I had to milk cows. Learn how to milk cows. I did, help clean the barn, whatever, a lot of stuff. But for the most part, it was play for us kids. Because, I lived on the farm for about 10 years. I think it was about 10 years. Or we had to move for the fact that the highway was going to go through. And they wanted to tear that house that we lived in down because it was too close to the road. And then they took some of my grandmothers took some of their property away from them. They had a big walnut tree. I hated to see that thing go. My grandmother did get $500 for that tree. They used it for walnut wood, which was really expensive wood. But so we had to move, and that's when we moved to Hornell. I actually lived, it was about 3 houses from the country line. We just 3 houses up the road, and there's a bridge that went across the creek, and that was considered country. That was farm stuff. So it was nice. We had real nice big. To me it was big, but now I think about it, it really wasn't that big a house. I had I think 3 bedrooms upstairs and a nice kitchen downstairs, and like a big dining room and a parlor, and then it went upstairs to the bedrooms. We had full basement underneath, all concreted. My dad had his wood shop down there, and he'd let us. I did some work on the wood lathe. Far as the table saw, he wouldn't let me touch that. We were only, at the time, 10 years old, and he wouldn't let us do the table saw. He wanted all our fingers. My dad's name was John Flory Baker. I don't know. I honestly don't know where they got his name, unless, of course, a lot of people name their kids after somebody in their family, and I don't really know. He never really mentioned too much about where his name come from or anything like Flory. I think, man, that sounded more like a girl's name than maybe he was supposed to be a girl. No, I know he wasn't, because he had 5 sisters. So he was deaf in one ear, and his other ear was folded. Well, he was deaf in that ear that was folded over, and he was always embarrassed about his ear. What happened? He thinks what happened, or the mother thinks what happened. She fell down a flight of stairs when she was pregnant, and she because all the other girls, they were fine, 5 sisters, they hear good and everything, but she thinks that he got hurt in her womb, from falling downstairs. I don't know. He don't know. Nobody knew. But that's what she thinks. But it was hard to hear. He had a small channel that went in his ear, so he couldn't hear good. And back them days, you didn't get kids hearing aids. I don't even know if they knew about them. So he was always the dummy, more or less. He was the worker. He worked on the farm with his dad, and the girls they did their thing at home, housework and stuff like that. But he had to do the farm work. He was an outcast because he couldn't hear good. It was true. He was an outcast, and they made him do a lot of hard work when he got older. And to talk about my dad, he spent whatever little money he could get. He was getting $1 a week from some other farmer doing some work for him. My dad saved everything he could get so he could buy an accordion. And but he did buy an accordion, a used one, of course, and he got a sheet music of Flight of the Bumblebee, which is very difficult. My dad didn't know how to read music or anything. He taught himself how to read music. He tried playing the accordion in the house. They all made him get out. He had to go to the milk house, they called it, where they brought the milk into the house. This was just a little room, and he had a little light in the milk house, and he'd sit there and learn how to play the accordion. He learned how to play it himself, never had no teaching, and he did learn how to read music. And he taught himself how to play that Flight of the Bumblebee. and he could play that thing better than the person. Well, Flight of a Bumblebee, it's actually written for a violinist, but he played it on the accordion. My dad was very good at playing the accordion. Oh, he learned polkas, he learned waltzes and regular, but he wasn't the type to just read music to do it. He had a good ear for music, which he couldn't hear, but he knew how to fill in and do his own thing, on an accordion. That's why everybody loved his accordion playing. Well, I know he wasn't born on that farm. I'm pretty sure they got the farm after he was born. I don't really know too much about my dad's. I know my grandfather, his dad, broke his back working, doing something. He fell or something, and actually broke his back, and they never could. He was hunchback all the time, so he had to have help on the farm. I know my grandmother, her name was Livermore, and my aunt went back in the ancestries or whatever. Well, no, I don't even know if it was then. It was a long time before that. They actually proved that my grandmother was ancestors of the Livermores that come over on the Mayflower with Columbus. She had some actual vases and stuff they proved come over on the Mayflower. They were from the Mayflower, which probably worth quite a bit of money, or they would have been good in a museum or something, When I was a kid, I was told that those vases, and the way they talked like any Livermore were related to was her last name. But yeah, nowadays, there's been a lot of Livermores come over from England or whatever, so I don't know how true that is. I remember wheat fields. They raised wheat because us kids used to go trample it down and make a house out of it. We have a living room. we did that quite a bit. Made my grandfather mad, but it was only just a little section. It didn't bother him that much. He raised wheat, and like I say, he had dairy cows. He had the cows. We milked them by hand. Never did machine milking. He probably had about, most I've ever seen was probably about 10 cows. We didn't really, I think he sold some of it, but most of it, my grandmother would make buttermilk and make cottage cheese, and we used it. Well, most of the time I think he only had mostly 5 cows at a time. It wasn't that many. We grew corn and wheat and just, I guess that's how he made his money, is from the wheat. And of course we always had bale hay. I used to go out, and I was 10 years old. I was picking up bales of hay, putting it on the trailer, the truck, to take to the barn. Of course, you'd say a bale of hay. Here, when I come to Arizona, a bale of hay weighed hundreds of pounds because it's a big bale, but these they were small bales. They weighed 50 pounds usually, but I could pick up the 50-pounders when I was 10 years old and actually throw it on the truck. I was pretty strong when I was a kid. My dad was a very loving dad. He paid attention to us kids a lot. I know when we lived on the farm, he at evening time and that, of course we didn't have TV back then, he'd play the accordion. And in fact, when I was 4 years old, he taught me how to play piano some. He'd teach me different things on top of Old Smoky and stuff like that, songs. But he was a very, very loving dad, but he was strict. I mean, us kids didn't get by with much. We'd get a little busting on the butt, but he'd never be abusive to us. If he paddled us, it was paddling. I don't remember my dad ever using a belt on us. He might have used a switch. My mother would use a switch more. I remember my mother once told me, go get a switch off the lilac tree. So they did use a little switch, which we deserved it. He never did it abusively or nothing like that. We deserved it. Yes, my dad died. I can't really tell you what year. It's been probably 15 years ago now. My mother died first, and then my dad died the next year. So, yeah, I honestly, I can't tell you what year. It's probably something I tried to block out of my mind. My dad got Alzheimer's before he died. I remember his mother had Alzheimer's real bad. He went back to New York, after we come to Arizona. He went back there, and she called him Danny, which was my cousin's name. He didn't understand the concept of Alzheimer's, but he got it. That's how he actually, he broke his hip and fell like a lot of old people do. I always heard that they fell and broke their hip, but I think they break their hip in falls, what they do actually. But I went to see him when he was in the hospital up in Las Vegas, talked to him. My dad had his own religious beliefs. I have to say, well, I'll put it this way. When we lived on the farm, and even actually when we went to Hornell, New York, and lived there, we'd go up to the farm and he'd argue with his sisters all the time about religion. His sister was, she'd be a Baptist one time and she'd be a Methodist another time. But, they're all similar religions, Protestant. But they'd get together at the farm at my grandma's house, and us kids would stay outside and play while they were just discussing religion. My dad had a lot of different views on religion than his sisters. They were strictly church. They read the Bible. My dad, he never really went to church because he couldn't hear good, But he read the Bible. I know they said he got a hold of a Jehovah's Witness lighthouse book, I guess it is, they call it. He found it in his mother's house where he was raised, and he read that, and he got twisted around a lot, but then he really believed in God, and I really never knew if he believed in Jesus, that Jesus was son, because he always said, well, my dad was type, he said, I always asked God to take me, put me in hell, so everybody else could be saved. I said, well, that's what Jesus did. Jesus died for everybody's sin. And Dad, he knew it, but he wouldn't, he always felt no one should go to hell. And he had visions of something, of hell, and he just could not stand the thought of anyone going to hell. And that's the way he believed. He just figured there's not really a hell. You're just going to die. That's it. Just like when you sleep real deep, you get in surgery. They put you to sleep. You don't feel nothing, hear nothing, see nothing. You're nothing. Which I would rather be that way than go to hell naturally. Well, my mother's name was Minnie Myrtle Mosier. I don't really know where she got that name from. Minnie Mouse wasn't around yet, so I don't think it's from that. I'm sure probably one of her uncles or aunts, not uncles, was named Minnie. I'm not sure. So my mother, she was a very loving mother, very very considerate to us kids. She she met my dad. I don't know if they were at a band or because my dad did play in orchestras around dance bands, but I'm not sure where she met him. But anyway, she met up with him. They started dating each other, I guess. But well, I don't really know that much about my mother. I never really heard too much about my mother. Uh, I know she got mixed up with my dad, and she got pregnant with my brother, and made a shotgun wedding out of it. It is actually a shotgun wedding. Her dad, boy, he was so mad because he found out, she got pregnant, and he said, "Well, you got to marry him," and all that. It was, but he hated my dad. Him, and actually her mother hated him. Nobody liked him. I think she had 4 brothers and 2 sisters. Yeah, she had 2 sisters. One was Aunt Elsie. I don't never remember her sister. She got electrocuted in a bathtub. She was in a bathtub, and they had an electric heater up there, and she happened to reach over to move the heater, and it fried her. Which I don't never remember her, but Mom used to talk about her. And but anyway, she married my dad and had the little boy Leland, and I come along 4 years later. My mother, well, she helped Dad a lot with the farm when we lived on the farm. She mainly stayed home when us kids were little, but then she got a job in a upholstery factory, which was probably about 10 miles towards Cancerega, which is I think it's about 15 miles from home, the country home farmhouse. She worked there. I remember when I was probably 6 or 7 years old. My dad would take her to work. As kids would ride with him, of course. And my dad used to set me on his lap and drive a car. He'd handle the gas, and of course, I'm sure he had his hands there at the steering wheel. But when I was a kid, I'm behind the wheel at 7 years old or something, I didn't know who was actually driving. It was straight roads, anyways. But I remember that real well. But he'd take her to work. So, yeah, and she worked in an upholstery factory. She did get a chair for some of her good works or something. They give her it's a real nice wood chair. I had it for years and finally got rid of it. But she mostly worked there while we were working at the farm, or lived in the country. But then when we moved to Hornell, she worked with my dad, and my dad got a body shop of his own, worked on cars, painting, and she helped him a lot. We had our aunt lived across the road with my grandma, and us kids we spent time over there while she was at work. My dad was at work, but she always took care of us kids good, even though she worked. At nighttime, she'd fix a good dinner, and I remember she always fix oatmeal or something in the morning for us. I always remember having a glass of Welch's grape juice. And it was every morning, Welch's grape juice. And we took certain vitamins. She'd never let us have any coffee. We couldn't have coffee or tea not until I was 18 years old. We never had anything caffeine in it. Why, I don't know, but my mother wasn't a religious person. Any religion she got, it was just from hearing my dad. And she found out later in life that wasn't the way it is supposed to be, according to the church, you know. But it didn't really bother us kids, her working or anything. It just seemed natural for us, you know, because that's the only way we were raised. I didn't know how city kids lived or anything like that or anybody else. The way we were raised is the right way, you know. She taught us how to do housework. She always kept a clean house, even though she worked. But I think us kids kept it clean because we had to do housework. We had our chores to do. Never got an allowance. You know, we might get a few cents here or something like that. But I learned a lot of work on the farm, hard work. Even though I was a little kid, I did, and we had to keep the house clean, which was good later in life. You know, it's like when we moved to Hornell, my mother, she worked with my dad. I don't think she worked outside. She actually got in there and she was a body and fender lady. But I would say, yeah, a lot of my work things were from my mother. She'd make us do housework. We had to do it right. Us kids we had to make sure we'd come home from lunch for school a lot of time, and we'd have lunch. But she had to go back to work with my dad, so she'd leave the dishes. Us kids had to do the dishes when we come home from school, you know, make sure, and we had to make sure our beds were made up. We didn't leave a messy bedroom, and we, every Saturday when we got up, we had to do a lot of housework. We had to make sure things were vacuumed and swept and dusted and whatever. We did all her housework for her. And it wasn't that she couldn't do it. She could do it on a Sunday because she didn't work on a Sunday most of the time. But it taught us kids how to do the regular housework. We learned how to cook when we were kids. We cook our own eggs or something like that. I mean, when Mom was home, she would cook, do the cooking and stuff like that. We'd have dinner. We'd have corn from, well, I remember corn on the cob all the time. I don't know why. We always had that. And when we had corn on the cob, that's all we had. We didn't have no vegetable with it, meat or anything. We ate a couple ears of corn, we were full, you know. But we had a little garden out back of our house. Had different vegetables and stuff. Yeah, my mother died when she was, well, it was about 18 years ago, maybe 19. No, 17. I think it was about 17 years old because I think she saw my daughter's youngest girl. I'm pretty sure she did. But anyway, she died in the house. She had asthma. She never had that until, she lived in a house. Well, she moved in a house next door to me in Glendale on Redfield Road in 1987. And she died a couple years later. So it was about 1990. She had asthma. Mom was a gardener. She loved flowers and stuff. And when she moved in there, she worked in the dirt a lot. And I think she got like valley fever, really. But they claimed it was asthma. And I thought it was from working at the factory, because she worked at Gruber's underwear factory, making men's underwear, working in there for, she worked there for probably a good 15 years when we moved out to Arizona. So I thought that's what was bothering her lungs, was the lint from all the cotton in the underwear factory. But My doctors didn't know. All they knew was this asthma. You know, that's what they figured it was. And Mom was very stubborn. That's where I get my stubbornness, I guess. Yeah, my mother was stubborn. I think that's where I got my stubbornness from. Because they wanted her to take steroid, how do you say that? Steroid? Yeah, steroid pills. And she took them for a little bit and she gained weight. And that bothered her something fiercely. I'm not taking them things no more, you know, because they do. They make you puff up. And she said, I won't take them. I said, well, you need to take them. You know, 'cause I don't want you to die from not taking your pills. Well, she died. I was at work. She died in the home, her house, in the living room. She was on the phone. Evidently, she called 911. She did call 911. But June had called me at work and told me that my mother she died, you know. Or, well, I don't think she told me on the phone that she died. Says she's very bad. She had to go to the hospital. So I left work and went to the hospital. She was already dead. Yeah. That's one of the hardest moments in my life, I think. Of course, that comes later. There's a lot of things in your life that you enjoy, and then a lot of things that hurt you, you know. My grandparents, which I don't, far as my dad's side, I know my grandmother was, well, his mother and father, Leland, they were pretty old when I was a little kid. Because I remember when my grandfather died, my dad's dad, they had his funeral in the parlor in the house, which they did back then a lot, you know. I remember the casket being in there. But I remember being outside on the front porch, talking to my cousins. We were just little kids. We were probably about 9 years old when he died. But my mother's side, I remember I was sick in school, and they called my grandparents come pick me up, and or maybe my mother did. She was helping my dad, no, I don't know how it was. But anyways, we ended up at my grandparents' house, her mom and dad, and they took care of us. I remember laying on the couch, and they were pretty old too. My grandfather, he was more of a junk collector or whatever himself. I don't ever remember what his job really was, because I know he had advertisements in magazines, and I really don't know what he was. All I remember is he junk collector. He drove a car like he's all the time honking the horn. Every time go around a corner, he'd honk a horn, so someone would hear him coming. You know, we did get on a freeway one time, and you know, boy, what do they think I'm next? I hate these things, you know, but they were really good to us grandkids. So both sides, Bakers and the Mosers. They used to spend a lot of time with us. We used to go up there a lot, up the hill we call it, because when we lived in Hornell, they were about probably 5 miles from us, and it was up a hill. So I remember up the hill, because my dad would say, "You want to go up the hill?" They eventually liked my dad. My dad used to do a lot for my grandparents, her mom and dad, help them financially and anything they needed. You know, he always helped them out, because they were kind of poor. In fact, they turned their house over to welfare of the state so that they could get taken care of. You know, and when they die, the house goes to the state, and that's it. We had a log cabin made. We built our own little log cabin right at the edge of the forest, and then The house part we trampled down was right outside the log cabin. Well, we talked our parents into letting us spend the night in our log cabin out in the forest. And back then, parents let kids do a lot more than they do today. Anyways, they let us spend the night out there. So we slept out there in the log cabin, the four of us. Woke up in the morning, looked out the log cabin, and this mountain lion was sitting right outside the log cabin in our little house we trampled down. Well, it was scary. My brother Lynn and we were probably, we were probably only 8 years old. I was only 8 years old. And we just stayed there, we didn't make a noise. We just waited and we must have waited for a good 2 hours before that lion would leave. And then after it left, we were kind of scared to go outside the log cabin because it could still be around and run us down, but it didn't. I think we're lucky. I mean, it could have attacked us, but we didn't bother it, so it didn't bother us. That's all. That was one scary thing we had when I lived on the farm, or exciting thing, you might say. I was told a lot of things that I know I was center of attraction when I come home. My brother was already Lee. He was 4 years old, so naturally I was a new thing, and I was exciting for Lee. I was a baby. I don't know anything about it, but I was told that I was more center of attraction, like I was until Lynn was born 18 months later and come home. And he was a brat. He really Lynn. I don't. He had a temper tantrum all the time when he got older. He would cry and cry until he got his own way. Or if he didn't get his own way, he'd hold his breath and he'd turn purple and pass out on the floor. I'm serious. That kid, and naturally, it had my mother scared. My dad, they'd pick him up and shake him because they thought he'd dead or something. But he got his way of doing that all the time and kept getting temper tantrum. I remember, I felt bad. I mean, he's getting all the attention, and I was always the middle one. It's like when you're a middle person, middle kid, you have to you give to your little brother because so he won't throw a little temper tantrum, and yet you have to give to your older brother too because he's older. It's like I don't get to be a child a favor or nothing like that. I always like when I talk or something, I'd say something, and my brother, oldest brother, he'd pick up and start saying the story for me. So I never was a talker or nothing. It's like if I start to say something, my older brother would take over and talk. Okay, and but Lynn, he kind of, the doctors went, or my dad went to the doctors and said, what's wrong with this kid? He passes out. Doctors, don't worry about it. Let him throw his temper tantrum. He turns purple, passes out. You'll start breathing again. That's what they told my mom. So they did. He'd fall down on the floor and let him turn purple. They'd watch him. He'd be up. It's just that way. But that's what the doctor said. Just let him pass out. He'll start breathing again. So they did. I don't know if he still does that today or not. Yeah, we went to New York. Like I said, we lived 2 houses from the country. They call it. We were in Hornell City. They call it, but Actually, we were outside city, just outside city limits, was two houses down. It was we had a creek there, and just past the bridge there was a big, they call it Chuck Dam. Uh, it it wasn't really too deep or nothing like that, but it'd freeze over in the winter time. Kids would ice skate, and we'd run, jump on our sleds on the ice. It was very, very. I loved it. Country. We had the creek. It went way up, and it had little waterfalls. We had they called the Indian Fall, which it was probably maybe 20 feet high or something. Water come down. We made our own swimming hole. I remember a time we had good neighbor kids, next door neighbors. They had three kids just like my cousins, and then down the street they had Sharon Greamer. I remember her. Kind of fell for her before I come out to Arizona. Well, anyways, we go up in the creek, and we had a little swimming hole up there. I remember we all stripped off. We didn't want to get our clothes wet, and we were bare naked, butt naked. It's all in the pool. But we didn't think anything bad about it, And all of a sudden we hear this guy yelling from up in the hills. I don't know if he's berry picking or what, but he's watching us kids. You kids get your clothes on you. Oh, okay, So we did. We got out of the water, got her. But we used to play in the creek a lot. We had right in back of our house. We had a cliff. They called it. It's probably, oh gosh, it's probably over 100 feet high, rocks. And my parents said we moved there. You kids are never to climb that cliff, the rocks, and we didn't. We no way. We had a garden always down below the cliff, and had a nice garden. We had the house come with a barn. It wasn't a barn. It was kind of like a garage. It would hold 4 cars or so. And upstairs, you go upstairs, and it was all wood floor. I'd say it's about the size of a half court basketball court. We had a basket up there. We had a punching bag. My dad let us use the upstairs for our play area. I remember it had a big door at the end of it. You could open up and you look down. There's the ground and all that stuff. We ate popcorn one time. All our neighbor kids and that, and we were up there eating popcorn. We'd throw our popcorn seeds and stuff out. So, well, son of a gun, it grew popcorn down there from our pop. I never thought popcorn could grow after it wasn't after it's popped. It was just the seeds and kernels. And I thought, well, if it's hot from the heat, but they didn't pop, I didn't think they'd grow. I figured they'd be dead, Of course, we didn't think about it anyway. We just threw out popcorn. Son of a gun, when corn come up, it was popcorn up there. That was cool. But we had a lot of fun there. Our hill, it goes up the hill. It's probably about 4 or 5 feet wide, and went up the hill. We used to slide downhill in the wintertime and go down that. It goes right into our big yard we had right by the barn, the garage. A lot of kids, they'd ski down it, and my dad built us a big a bobsled. It'd hold about 5 people. And he built it. It had like skis for runners and stuff. We took that up there, and it went off the path, and it was not straight down, but into the woods, the forest, we hit a tree, and I busted my ankle. Yeah, that's where first time I broke my ankle. No, I didn't break it. I sprained it. They had to carry me back to the house in winter. But I remember a lot of good times back there. And we lived there probably about 3 years. All summertime we go pick berries. We go up. They had apple trees, wild apple trees. It was a good life. I had a I had an excellent. If I ever said I could, if I could go back, I'd do the same thing, and I would, because at nighttime, in summer times, all the neighbor kids gangs get out. We play hide and seek and whatever. You know, it was just never thought about television. We had television maybe the last year that we lived there. We had to string copper wires all the way up the over the mountain, have our antenna up on top of the hill, you know. And whenever it rained or something, knocked the antenna down or something, we wouldn't have television. But my parents didn't let us. We didn't watch much television. We only had one channel, anyways. It was CBS. I remember watching Lawrence Welk. My dad always watched Lawrence Welk. My dad played in quite a few different bands. I enjoyed that. I think that's where I got my talent for music, is from him. We had neighborhood kids. Right next door, they had, like I say, they had Billy, Larry, and Jimmy. Jimmy was quite a bit younger than any of us, really, but Larry and Billy was more my age, and Larry kind of Lynn's age, but we all chummed around a lot. Lee, we didn't do much with Lee. Lee was 4 years older than me, and you know, he was in high school when I was in grade school. Danny, which my cousin, come down from the farm once in a while, and they'd go out with their BB guns. He got his BB guns taken away from him from the police because he was in city limits. But Lee more or less had his friends, and Lynn and I chummed around a lot with the neighbor kids back there. As far as I met this girl lived down the street. She lived about 5 houses down across the street. Her name was Sharon. She little redhead, but not real red hair. She had kind of brownish red, but she had a cute little thing, and we started liking each other. I'd go on my bicycle running down to the store, which is about a mile away, to get her ice cream milkshake or something like that. Of course, they'd be melted every time by the time I got home with her. But anyways, we did have fun. I know I never kissed her or anything. I was too shy. We'd go up in the hay barn, and other neighbor kids up there doing little nasty things. She said, "You want to do that?" And no, I don't think so. It don't look like fun to me. But no, I liked her. In fact, I wrote her a few letters when we moved out here to Arizona, but nothing become of it. My aunt would take us sometimes, probably to some of her church stuff, and I never really got into it. Well, I guess I was probably about 11 years old or something. I happened to go to, I don't know if I met the pastor or what. I knew where they lived, but I was the first one to go to church. They took me on a field trip. The church did. I went fishing. Caught my first fish, actually, from a church thing together, and they had a little perch. Not big enough to eat, but I remember that, though. My Aunt Ellen, she, once in a while, I don't even think my mother went. She'd pick us up, kids up, and like I say, one time she's Methodist, one time she's Baptist, but it didn't matter to us kids. We, you know, if it was any kind of religion, I don't think we really got too much out of it. I got most of my religious stuff was from my dad when I was a kid, but my religion didn't come until later. When I was a kid, we used to just about, gosh, it seemed like every weekend we'd go up to my dad's, or the farm where he lived, you know, where his sister lived with his mother. We spent a lot of about every weekend we go up there, at least like a Saturday night or something, so they could have their church discussions, religious discussions, whatever. But yeah, we had a lot of get-togethers. And then when we lived in Hornell, most of my mother's side of the family, Mosier's, and they lived around Hornell, so we'd get together quite often. They'd come, and my uncle played the banjo, and my other uncle, he played violin. My grandpa played violin, my mother's dad, and my aunt, which is my mother's sister, she played piano real well. They'd all come up, and they'd get a jam session going. Of course, my dad on the accordion, so that was always nice. We enjoyed that. They'd play in the house, or they'd go outside and play. It had a good jam session. In fact, I think my dad played accordion with my mother's sister that played piano. I think they had a little band together for a while. 'Cause I know I've seen pictures. My brother Lee, he got a lot of photos from my mother after she died, and I know I've seen them when she had them, but they disappeared after she died, and they went to Las Vegas with my brother, and then he moved to Georgia and died. So I think there's a lot of photos back there that I don't have. I miss. But they did get together. We got together a lot. We were real close to the family. My dad had rheumatism, and a guy my dad lived with, or worked with, I'm sorry. A person my dad worked with moved out here to Glendale, Arizona. And I guess they had conversation through mail or whatever, and he wanted my dad to come out here, see what it was like, and he could get a job for him in the auto body shop. So my dad and mom come out here to see what it was like, and Dad liked it, especially it was kind of winter time when they come out, and it was nice. It felt good on his bones, and all this stuff. So that's they decided when they went back, Dad wanted to come out here and live, and Mom too, and that's what made them decide to come out to Arizona. And what hurt the worst is my mother's brother said when we left, he said, "You'll be back." My dad's stubborn, just like I am. And my dad would not. They wanted to go back quite a few times because things weren't really good out here. His job he got was not a good job. The guy cheated on his invoices and didn't pay him the way he's supposed to. It was really tough on him. But they wouldn't go back. They went back for a vacation just to see people, but no way they weren't going to go back to stay just because I can't do nothing about it. My uncle's dead now, so I forgive him. Well, grade school, back in Hornell, it was actually good 3 or 4 miles to my grade school. Lee, he went to high school in Hornell. I think he took a bus, but I didn't. We didn't have a bus come pick us up. We actually walked good 4 miles to school. It was fun though. I mean, we enjoyed it because all the neighbor kids were going all together. I mean, they had chestnut trees along the way. We'd pick chestnuts, fill bags full of chestnuts. Why, I don't know. They were just something like marbles. How kids collect marbles. Well, we collected chestnuts, and but it was quite a ways to school. I remember fourth grade. I had a teacher. I can't remember her name. I used to know it. She had me play. She found out I played accordion, because I played a little bit with Dad's accordion, and she had me play for the women's club in Glendale. I had to play in front of these women. The accordion. I played on top of Smokey. I played another one, but I can't remember what it was. But they gave me a plastic model jet. I had to put together, glue it together in a box, for playing. I always remember that. That was fun. And I remember a lot in the 6th grade. I played softball, and I was good at playing baseball, softball, football. I was good at all the sports. But
how would you describe yourself as a student?
I was a good student. I did well back there in New York. But when I come out to Arizona, I think I started in 6th grade seventh, might have been 7th grade when I come to Arizona, and I did well. I went over to a different school, and everything was piece of cake, nothing. I already knew just by everything they're teaching. And then 8th grade, I had the principal of the school, Mr. Sign. He was our 8th grade teacher. Well, as long as we had our work done in school, we had a regular table tennis in the room, a ping pong table. And we could play ping pong as long as we did our work. Well, I didn't do hardly any work. It was simple. Homework or anything we got, I just knew it. It's because I always heard, I heard later, when you come from back east to the west, the easier school gets in the west. Well, that's the way I was. Math, I knew, it was nothing to me. Well, I got spoiled playing ping pong. It's terrible to say. But the teacher didn't care. He was the principal of the school, and I played ping pong most of the day while kids were studying their science or whatever. And it ruined me. It really did. Because then when I went to high school, I was used to not working. You get homework, or it caught up to me. In other words, what they should have done when I was 7th grade is put me up in a higher year, like they do now, I guess, sometimes. But because I already knew what they were teaching. What's the sense of going through listening, doing the same thing you'd already done, a couple years ago? I liked my science teacher. He was a nice guy. And he was interesting. In fact, he every year, I don't know how many times during school, but he'd take 4 guys and take them to Rocky Point for a field trip, like. And he actually drive his own car. I think he did it more on his own. Didn't have nothing to do with school. He did it on his own. He'd take us down to Rocky Point. We get down there late in at dark, I know. The tide was coming in, and we'd sleep all night. And he had us made while we were in school. We just had a broomstick and pound a nail in it. He had the sharp end down somehow. I can't remember how we did it, but for getting specimens and whatever. But we did that. I enjoyed. It was fun. Rocky Point back then, all it was is a tuna factory, I think, and they didn't have all these things like they got today. We were right out there on the ocean, and I remember one time, when we were out there, we'd break off little octopus. They're only about that big around when they're little, purple thing. They look ugly, but we'd break them off the reefs, and we'd take that. We'd get starfish and seahorses, and there's only one bad thing that happened. He was out. My science teacher was out, and an octopus grabbed him, and it had a head on it about that big around. It was big. And it grabbed him in the leg. And we were all chopping at it to get it off his leg. It really hurt him pretty bad, but we got the octopus off, and we did all right. But anyway, I did enjoy that teacher. He
takes you to Mexico.
he gets an octopus put out of it. I remember we had one Mexican boy who was named Ramon. He'd always have him clean out the aquarium full of scorpions because he was immune to them. He lived in a shack, Mexico. We called it Mexican Town. It was right next to where I used to live in Glendale. But anyways, he was immune to the bites, and he could clean out that thing. He didn't care how. And they'd bite him. No problem. Sting him, I should say. They don't bite, they sting. But I remember my teacher used to have him clean out that scorpion thing all the time. That was pretty good. You're a smart teacher. Oh, that teacher, he'd come. If you're messing around in class, you're supposed to be listening or whatever, he'd be walking by and he'd grab you right by the sideburn. He said, "You behave." He said, "I'm going to pull these things right off you." I always kept my sideburns up in 7th grade. I didn't have much sideburns. I played the piano quite a bit. I took lessons, and I hated them. I hated to practice. I was a normal kid as far as taking lessons. My parents wouldn't make me do it. And I feel bad about that right now. I wish I would have kept up with piano lessons. I dink around with it, but I wish I could have played a lot better than, more reading music type stuff. I always played like what my dad did, in the band. He never really, I can't say he played country because he didn't have much country back in New York. I went to high school in Glendale. What happened is I went to grade school. It was about 3 miles away, Unit 4, and then when I went to high school, that was a few miles away. My dad bought me a motorcycle. It was a used Cushman Eagle, and he bought me that for when we moved to our house in Glendale. And he painted it candy apple red, really fixed it up nice. And it was actually a 5 horsepower engine, but it had work on it, and it made it up to over 8 horsepower. But you couldn't tell by looking at it, so he bought it for me. Oh, I loved that motorcycle scooter. It looks like a little motorcycle. I wish I had it today. They were worth a lot more money. But anyways, he got that for me. And as far as high school, I went to Glendale High, and I drove my own motor scooter to high school. I didn't take a bus. I run around a lot when I was 14. We moved. My parents felt sorry because they brought us here to Arizona because it wasn't near as much fun as it was back east. We just had a better life back there, you might say. We come out here and lived in a little cabin. They called it cabins. There was just a one room, one bed in it, and another room for another bed. Us kids stayed in. It was a dumpy place out on Grand Avenue. But we did get this house. We moved out here on my brother's birthday, August 18th. I'll never forget it, 1958. And we stayed in cabins or whatever until, my parents tried to get a nicer home, but they couldn't qualify for it because he hadn't worked long enough out here. And they bought this house in Glendale for, I don't know, but we moved in exactly on my birthday, November 17th. I always remember that because it was my birthday when we moved in the house, my brother's birthday when we moved out here to Arizona. Well, anyways, after grade school, we went to high school, Glendale High, and I got into. I liked band. I played clarinet when I was fourth grade. I and I played clarinet right up through seventh and eighth grade, right up into the high school. So I got in symphonic band in high school, playing the clarinet. So in the marching band, I got into that, and that was a lot of work. Marching band, we were out there before school started, marching in the field. We did regular formation. Glendale had one of the most people in their marching band, most students in the marching band. They had a 100-piece marching band, which back then was a lot, you know. So, yeah, I went to Glendale High. I got in the marching band, played clarinet, and then I was in symphonic band also during, you know, school time, played clarinet. But that's I played band every year in high school. I got into orchestra and played bass fiddle, the big boom boom boom.
So you would just then have to say that your special interest, hobbies, or obsessions in high school was music.
Music, yeah. And I got, like I say, in the orchestra uh, in my sophomore year, I think it was, maybe junior. But learned how to play the bass fiddle. Well, I played in a lot of. They had musical plays in high school. They had Abby. I keep saying Lil Abner. I was going to say Dear Abby. No, no, Dear Abney. Anyway, it was Lil Abner, and I played bass. We had the orchestra down, pit orchestra, you know they called it, and I played bass for that. The big bass. That was fun. I really enjoyed that. I got into school. Well, they had dance band for the school, and I was in the dance band, which I played the big bass then. I learned how to play the bass guitar. It was the same fingering, but quite a bit smaller scale, you know. But I learned to play that. Being so I knew how to play the big bass, well, my dad bought me a bass guitar, and I learned that so I could play it in a band, you know. We did a lot of running around. I get out of school, and I didn't think about schoolwork or anything like that. It was just chumming around, just friend. We never got in trouble. There's a couple guys, they were going to get in trouble, and I'd shy away from them. I was always good about that. I can say I never got in trouble with the law, and I could have if I would have done things that they were doing. They were going to steal railroad ties at one time. I didn't go with them, you know. Of course, we weren't going to steal them while we were on motor scooters. They were the only thing I did probably illegal was going to Cactus and 51st Avenue. They didn't have a bridge there, but they had a canal, and I'd ride my motor scooter with my buddy on back, and across the canal, which you can imagine, the canal is pretty wide, but they had about a 8-inch slab of cement that would go across, probably maybe 12-inch. Yeah, more like 12-inch. I wasn't that good, but I drive my motor scooter. At that time, I had a Vespa. My dad, well, I paid for it. A Vespa, a new Vespa. It was eight horsepower. Good little scooter. It's an Italian scooter. But I had my friend on back, and we go across that canal on that little 12-inch slab of cement at night. We'd drive across that canal, and right on the other side of the canal was a watermelon patch. Well, we'd steal a watermelon and then drive back. You know, that's probably the closest thing I got to breaking the law. But we'd every once in a while the farmer would come and he'd catch us and he'd start coming after us. Well, we drove around across that slab of cement. There's no way they couldn't get a car anywhere because there wasn't no bridge at that time. But well, there's one other time I did break the law. I went to Newberry's when I was a kid, when I lived back in New York. This was, and I stole a goldfish in a goldfish bowl, and I put the fish in the bowl. I actually put it in a bowl and had water, and just walked out the store with a goldfish. You know, my mom and dad, they wondered where I got it, and I said, well, I bought it at Newberry's. Well, back then I used to mow yards and shovel sidewalks and rake leaves for money, so they figured I paid for it. I never told them I stole it. Well, that goldfish died after a few weeks. I felt I had to flush it down the toilet. I figured that was my punishment for stealing it, you know. But that's about the only thing I did against the law.
Now, who would you say was like your best buddy in high school?
Well, it was my best buddy his name was Leonard Stringer. Good looking kid. He looked like he'd buff. He looked like he worked out a lot, but he never worked out a day in his life. He just naturally got strong arms, nice pecs, beautiful blonde curly hair. You know, very good looking kid, but never thought about girls or nothing like that. That was we used to go out to the place they call Thunderbird Park. It's still out there, but now it's all houses. But we'd go out there in the desert. We'd chase rabbits or whatever with our motor scooters, and we'd go across the desert all the way to Lake Pleasant, and we constantly doing stuff on our motor scooters after school. One time I was home and sleeping, and phone rang about 2:30 at night, in the morning, you might say. And my mother answered the phone. She says, Clarence, Leonard wants to talk to you. I said, what? You know, I'm sleeping. You know, what the heck? What's he want? So well, it's very important, he said. So I answered, and Leonard said, well, I need help. I went out to Thunderbird Park, and I'm coming back, my motor scooter quit running. I said, Leonard, it's raining like crazy out. He said, what? I don't care. I got to go home, you know. We got school tomorrow. And I said, yeah, I know. I said, okay, I'll be out. Well, I got on my scooter and drove out there. And he was outside of his motor scooter laughing his head off. I don't have no trouble with my motor scooter. I just want to get you out of bed and get you in this rain. I'd never forget that. Oh, I could have killed him, you know. But we had a lot of fun. We found a car out by Lake Pleasant once out, and it's a brand new Corvette. Someone had taken and stripped it, and we went to Peoria Police and told them about it, and they went out and checked it out, of course. Well, it wasn't a week later, the police come to my house and come to his house. They wanted to search our houses for parts for this Corvette. They were accusing us of doing it, and I thought, man, you know, we're just being good reporting it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have reported. And he had a lot of parts around the house, but they weren't for a Corvette. They were for other, because he dinked around with mechanic stuff all the time, and his dad did too. But we didn't get accused. They got accused of it. We never got in trouble for it, and it wasn't our fault. So, but anyway, that's the thing. Leonard was my chum around buddy. I seen him years later. I went over. I found out he was married to the girl that lived across the street from him, and I didn't like her too much. She had smart remarks made when I went to his house there. Leonard had only one eye. He was out hunting, and he was chipping off some shale, and a piece went into his eye, and he pulled it out, which he should have never done. The doctor said it lost all its fluid, and so he only had the one eye then. When I went to visit him, his wife, wow, you put on a lot of weight. And I thought, you know, I just didn't like her. And I talked to Leonard. We had good talks later in life, but we didn't. When I got married, I got away from all my old friends. That comes later. I'll tell you about that.
Yeah, that happened to me when I met
But
him.
that was my friend. I had another friend, Mike Waters. He was another good guy, but he was kind of a spoiled brat. He wanted he was his mother wasn't married. Well, she was, but Dad left home. He was spoiled. She bought him a motor scooter just 'cause we had one. And then she bought him a car later, Mercury. But he was more into girls. He liked girls. Leonard and I weren't partial to girls. We did our guy friends, type stuff. We just had fun. I would say probably my band teacher is the one I liked the most. I can't say he really taught a lot because we knew mostly because like me, I played clarinet since fourth grade, so I knew how to play. I knew how to read music. Uh, he didn't really teach. He taught me some when I did get into orchestra. Uh, he was he was a good he was a good teacher. He taught pretty good on the bass, but I didn't really like him so much for teaching. I guess he never bothered me too much. I went to a Halloween party the band had once, and uh, they made the band room into like a spook house or haunted house or something. I walk in from the street or the parking lot, like you walk in, and what it was, you walk in the door, and there's a slab you walk on. There's a railing here, and then you had to go down steps into the band room area where, they had tiers where the band played, but anyway, I walked in. It was dark. I didn't see nothing. My brother. I had a bet with my band teacher that I'd have a better costume than him. Well, my brother Lee was into a lot of plays and stuff. He had makeup and stuff. He loved doing stuff and he made me into a monster. I looked bad, I really did. And then first thing you do is walk in the band room, and I had somebody shove me, and I didn't want to. I knew there's steps down there. I didn't want to fall down the steps. They're cement steps, but they give me a little shove. It wasn't a bad shove, but I didn't like that. I just turned around, grabbed him, and I threw him because I didn't want to get shoved. And I was a monster anyway. I could do that, I threw him over this railing, but I didn't think I figured he was a kid, Well, anyways, after the so-called spook house, we went over to the big cafeteria, and we were having the party there. That's where they have their cake, whatever. And the band teacher was there. He said, well, someone threw me over this railing. He said, that wasn't very nice of him. And he didn't know who it was at the time. It was dark in there. And it was me, But I did enjoy. He was a good teacher. I liked the 60s music, rock and roll type stuff. That's when the Beatles become popular. I can't say that I really liked the Beatles, but I like some of their music. I guess if I listened to anything, it was mostly rock and roll. I never listened to Western. That wasn't hip for teenagers.
That's back in the late 50s and 60s.
Yeah, late
Were you in high
50s.
school?
When I was in high school, I was in high school when I was let's see, it was 1960, I think, when I started high school. Yeah, 1960, and yeah, it was mostly rock and roll. In fact, that's when I got into a rock and roll band when I think it might have been my sophomore year when I learned to play bass guitar. I played bass for. We never really played any place. We just practiced. That's all it was. Practice, practice, practice. I listened to rock and roll. I liked my dad's type music because I was raised. I go to some of his concerts. He played the band. He played uh, a lake You know, he'd play at a lake in there. They had big square dance halls, you know, and he'd play for square dancing. And I really, and that's why today even I'll play a lot of the songs that my dad played, you know. And I always enjoyed that, even actually more than rock and roll. I never got in rock and roll that much until I got in the band. Well, our lead guitar player, he knew a lot of the rock and roll stuff, so I learned how to play it. But I never was the type that listened to words to songs. Really, I was more instrumental. I like instrumentals. I always did. As far as singing, yeah, I could take it, but I never really listened to words too much. People would sing songs, and I knew the song, but I never knew what the words were. Sometimes it's better off I didn't know the words. But anyways, that's the way it was as far as music goes. Our lead guitar player, he was very good at lead guitar, and he's from Canada, and he got a job with some Western group. I can't remember. I know the names of some of the guys, but anyways, he got a job playing at Cooley's Tavern, which was way out in Buckeye almost. I took him out there. I let him use my bass and amp, but he didn't have a way to get around. I had a '52 Chevy at the time, so I took him out there, and I was sitting there at a little stove right by the bandstand, and he'd play, and I'd listen to him play. I wasn't no dancer, that's for sure. And it's the first time really I'd been in a bar. And then that was a Saturday night. This girl was sitting out there in the audience, and she came there because the guy I was loaning the bass to in our band, he looked like her old girlfriend. What happened, Sonny, which is her brother, told her, he was there Friday night, and he told June, her name was June, said to his sister June that there was somebody in the band that looked like her old boyfriend. So she wasn't going to go, but she decided she'd go out Saturday night, and that's where I first seen her. And she got talking to Dave, which the guy I loaned the bass to. And well, what happened is we ended up taking her, and Dave rode with me, of course, took her to her house, and where she lived. And well, it just happened she started liking him, you know, and every night he played out there, we'd go, and she'd meet him. I'd end up taking him over to her house sometimes during the night. Well, I got to a point where she introduced me to her girlfriend, Jean Ann. Jean Ann she was a nice girl. I felt sorry for her. At the time, she looked clean and everything. June used to have to clean her up and everything. She's a little, she's pretty filthy. Anyway, she set me up with Jean Ann so she could see Dave, because that way I bring Dave over to her house, and Jean Ann, I talked to her and all this stuff. Well, I didn't like Jean Ann. I wasn't a girlfriend type person. I didn't like girls. I was scared to death of them, and so I never had nothing to do with Jean Ann. Well, anyway, it come down to June was getting tired of Dave. I'd pick her up. Well, the next time I come out, I brought this girl I knew. She lived 5 houses down from me, Teddy Head. She was built like a brick chicken coop, you know. I mean, she was, oh, really. June even admits it to this day. She was a beautiful girl. And she was. She had a good shape. But Teddy lived with her in Glendale for a long time, lived down the street, so we were just friends. And Teddy liked me a lot, but I was, like I said, I was shy of girls. I never really went with her, but I got her to go over to June's house with me. So I introduced her to June as my girlfriend. That way June would quit having Jean Ann come and see me. I didn't want nothing to do with Jean Ann, you know. I really didn't have much to do with Teddy, but she went along with me, and then I did. We went out to a place in El Mirage bar, and Dave had to play out there, and then I'd take Teddy home, and then I'd take June home. Uh, well, June kind of shied away from Dave, and she told me I could come over and see her anytime, because she didn't really want to go with Dave. She didn't like him that well, and I was, okay. So I'd go over and see June. I'd talk to her, just a friend type thing. I did ask her if she wanted to go to the show, and she said yeah, and I ended up taking Teddy with me because June made June mad. Why did you bring her along when you're taking me to the show? Well, it's just that way, I thought I didn't think she'd want to go with me by myself, but yeah, that's where I met June. We went for quite a while. Just I'd go over there and watch TV until it turned off the air, and I'd finally go home. Then I'd get up and go to school the next day. And I was 18. I was a senior in high school, 18. And well, that's the way it was. And I took June to senior dance I had to play for. It was a little group. And she went. She had this red dress on, man, tighter than skin. She sure looked good. I mean, it just fascinated all the guys that were there. Clarence was with that, June was 21 when I was 18, and she had 3 kids, Jake, Johnny, and Judy. I loved them little kids when they were little. But anyway, we went to the high school dance, and she met all these people, and they were fascinating. Well, after the party, anyways, I took June to my house, my parents' house. Lee was there, Lynn, and Lee's eyes fall out of his head. No, Clarence ain't with this, June was a good-looking chick. Boy, I tell you, she was really a fox. And I just introduced her to my parents, and they liked her, but I'm sure they were amazed too, I didn't tell them about the kids. That come later. Actually, I met June. I was supposed to graduate. That's why I was talking about graduating party. When I was in high school, senior year, we had our graduation exercises. We had to practice, walking down the aisle, whatever, Well, my counselor called me to his office and told me, he said, "You're not graduating." And I said, "I'm what?" He said, "No, you don't have." Back then, you had solid credits and just regular credits. They were called units. You had to have so many units, which was solid credit, in order to graduate. Well, I'd taken too much band because I had senior or symphonic band. I had orchestra band. The same year I was taking. I took too, and then PE. You were required to take that one year. Okay. They didn't consider it a solid, but yet you had to take it. It didn't make sense to me. I thought that was the stupidest thing. You're required to take something. It should be a solid credit, but that's not the way they did things. So anyways, I was missing a few solid credits I had to take. So anyways, I didn't graduate. And when I met June, I worked a little bit for my dad in the body shop. My dad worked me awfully hard. I always wondered why he worked me so hard. He had other workers that worked for him, didn't work as hard as I did. My dad wanted me to hate body work. He hated it. He worked hard at it. He was good at it, but he hated it. And he didn't want his kid to grow up be a body and fender man because it was a hard working job. And He did right because I hated it. I hated it bad. But anyway, I worked a little bit for him, and I got when I met June after high school. I did get a job at Gruber's Underwear Factory where my mother worked, and I worked there for about a year. Uh, June, I wanted to marry her, but I just figured I couldn't support her that well. And June, she crying, wanted to get married. I couldn't afford the ring. I'd finally bought $100 ring at Daniel's Jewelry. It was a pretty nice ring. At that time, it was pretty good money. Cost quite a bit. So, well, when I was going with her, my parents, what happened is they sent me to school. I wanted to go to school in Glendale, California, to bowling machine school, mechanic, and they call it pin spotter school. Well, I went to that with my brother. It was only a three-week course, brainwashing course. They give you the homework. They taught you everything. Lee didn't do too good at it. He was he managed, but I used to write June every day and every night after school, and I wrote to her, and I kept sending her stupid letters to Glendale, Arizona. She lived in Phoenix, Arizona. She got most of all. I realized it a couple weeks later, and she wondered why I wasn't writing her. Well, all their mail was going to Glendale, and they never did figure it out to go to Phoenix. So, anyways, my mother wrote, I don't know if she wrote or called on the phone, I can't remember. But she found a baby shoe in the car. She wondered whose that was, who it come. And I told her, well, I'll tell you about it when I get home. I didn't want to talk to her. So anyways, that's when she found out June had 3 kids, I told her. She wanted me to break off, really. She couldn't see me having 3 kids at 18 years old and married to this girl, Although they loved June. They liked her a lot, but they found out where she lived because I was kind of staying with her. And, I told them, I said, well, I was 18 at the time. And back then you had to be 21 in order to get married without your parents' signature, So anyways, they found out where she lived. They come to the door once. I was in a little house she lived in. I went out and answered the door, and I had a cigarette in my mouth. And my parents they didn't know I smoked. I grabbed that real quick and I snuffed it out with my hand, and had them come in. We talked for a while, probably about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and Dad says, "Don't you think you ought to go out there and see if that cigarette was completely out and ain't going to burn this house down?" There's a wood porch. I felt like knee high to a grasshopper then. I felt so embarrassed in that night. And then I had to explain my smoking, and then June on top of that, and I thought I was dead. I sometimes felt like I should be dead. But anyways, we talked for a while, but then they were very nice, and my parents were, and they said, well, we need to talk to you more at home. So I said, well, I really don't want to go home. And they said, you go home. I had to drive home. And that's when they got on to me. I said, I want to marry her. They said, well, no, you're not going to. I said, well, yeah. I said, I'm going to live with her for a while, and I'm going to marry her. Well, they disagreed to it, but finally, they didn't have much choice because I lived there. I went over to June's, stayed with her for quite a while, and they finally come over and said, well, go ahead and marry her. I said, well, what made you change your mind? Well, you're living with her, and we don't want you to get her pregnant and have a kid out of wedlock, so you might as well marry. I said, you ain't got to worry about that. She's on birth control pills. That was not the right thing to say either. Hey, I was 18. I didn't know him. That's the first girlfriend I ever had. I kissed her. That's the first girl I actually kissed. I wanted her. That's all there was to it. To be honest with you, I lived with June for a year before, so I knew what it was going to kind of be like. My work situation, had I not been playing in a band, I got a job playing Western band. If I hadn't got played in the Western bands every weekend, I'd make, sometimes I'd be $10 a night playing, which wasn't much, but I played 3 nights, so that's $30. Most time, excuse me, most time it was about $45 a weekend I played, and I made $50 to. Sometimes when I worked overtime, I would make maybe $80 a week at work. So you might say I made $100 a week. Back then, it wasn't that bad. I'd spend $20 for groceries, and it would last the family of June and 3 kids, for a week. So it wasn't really that bad. Our rent was cheap. We lived on 12th Street when I was first married, 12th Street and in between Indian School and Camelback. Nice little house, had nice wood floors to get a drink. Nice wood floors in it. It was a cute little house. I think it was 2-bedroom. We liked it a lot. Lived right next door was a little corral, like a pasture where they had a couple horses out there. It was fun. It was nice. The kids were real young at that time. Then I got a job working in a machine shop. Our lead guitar player in the band told me about this machine shop, so I'll go over and talk to him about it. And I didn't even know what a machine shop was. What's a machine shop? But I thought it's where they make machines or something, but they did aerospace stuff. And I got interviewed and I got the job. Well, the lead guitar player that I told me about the job, I didn't know he was getting out of the job. I was taking his place. And I said, why are you doing that? Why are you getting out? Well, the doctors told me I need to get out because my hearing's bad and it's going to make it worse. Well, I should have known right then it was bad for your hearing, but I didn't, and I worked as I'd sweep floors. I'd run a drill press doing different things on a drill press. But I worked there for over 10 years. I started out the same money I was making at Gruber's Underwear Factory. I think I was making $1.25 or $1.50 maybe. But there's guys working there, they make $5 an hour, and that was good money, I thought, man, I can't wait till I get up to that. Well, every time I got a raise, they raised the cost of living, raised the minimum wage. They'd go up to $1.75, and that's what the boss would give me, $1.75. And they're bringing people off the street that didn't know anything. They're giving them $1.75. I thought, this ain't fair. This isn't fair. It's not fair. Whatever. It's not. I said, you're paying them the same amount of money. They know nothing. I've already got a couple years experience, and you're paying me the same as minimum wage. Well, that's the way it is. They don't even want to pay that much for minimum wage, but the government wage raise it, whatever. So I worked quite a while. I worked, like I said, 15 years. I learned how to run a lathe and quite a bit. In fact, I worked there and they made me foreman there after quite a few years. Well, actually, about 13 years I worked, and they made me foreman of the secondary shop. They had the big machines in the back, and they had a foreman back there, and I was to run the smaller lathes and stuff like that. But all the other foremen before me, they were just ones that had their coffee and cigarettes, go around, see how you're doing. any questions, they'd answer the questions, stuff like. Well, no, they wouldn't. My boss wouldn't do that for me. I had to be a working foreman. I had to work on the machine same as I always would, plus take care of everybody else. And I didn't get a raise right then. And then all of a sudden the boss comes out and has a big meeting. Well, we got to take 15% off each of you because of hard times, you know, which things were, economy was bad, whatever. And I thought, man, I never got a raise for being this foreman. I walked into the boss and told him, hey, you know, I've been foreman. You never give me a raise for it. I don't feel like you should take 15% away from me. Well, the door swings both ways. You can go. So I did. I quit. You know, it wasn't fair to me. But so I got another job. I worked for another machine shop. But anyway, getting back, the first year. I'm sorry, the first year of June, it was kind of financially tough, but not real bad because, like I say, I had to play a part-time job, and I had a good job. So, I don't think it's changed. I don't think our relationship changed at all, really. June loves me. I love her, and oh yeah, well, you know, it wasn't a perfect marriage. We had spats, which everybody has spats. I like the spats we have now better than then because both of us are older. We wonder what we're arguing about, and neither one of us remember. So it was forget real quick until maybe a year down the road, and then she'll remember. I want any of my kids know anything about our marriage or to help them with their marriage. Pay attention to what your spouse is saying and admit they're right. That prevents a lot of argument, although I haven't done that in years, and I know you won't either. Learn to forgive a lot. That's the most important. You know, they screw up. In your eyes, they mess up somehow or did something you don't like. Learn to say, you know, hey, I accept your apology, even though you didn't apologize. No, learn to say, you know, for yourself, learn to say, I'm sorry. Make it, it could be not your fault, or even if it is your fault, make sure you say, you know, apologize. Don't let your quarrels linger on. Always, I always kind of made it a point, most of the time, if we have our little spats or something like that, learn to forgive before I go to sleep. I want peace, you know. And I have to admit, there's times that, you know, we might argue when we're in bed, so it's kind of hard to forgive before you go. But what's going to happen is you're not going to sleep. You're going to linger on thinking, well, all the time. Just always be forgiving and be apologetic in what you do, and try always to love your spouse. And I'm sure there's a time that, you know, they had love, that they did love each other, and don't try to stay away from lust towards other people, you know. And it's very difficult to do sometimes. There's times I thought, I have to admit, I think it'd be nice to have a couple wives, you know. You get tired of one, but you can cut this out. Don't let June hear that. No, it's just love your spouse. That's all I can say, and really be apologetic and forgiving. That's what life is about, you know. When I met June, she had 3 children. It was Joe Alton Baker. We called him Jake. And then there's Judy Ann Baker. Well, actually, I'm sorry. Their names weren't Baker. It was Jacob. Joe Alton Jacobs and Judy Ann Jacobs and John Anthony Jacobs. They were all JAs, same as June Arlene Baker, or Anderson. Jacobs. Yeah, Jacobs. Anyways, Johnny was 2 months old when I met June, and Judy was, I think she was quite, no, she wasn't 2 yet. She was a year and a half or so. And Joe was 3 years old. And they were all young kids, and I really got along good with them, because they didn't know their dad. Their dad was in the Navy, and never seen him really. Never seen much of him. He'd come home on leave and see him. And so, of course, Johnny, he was only 2 months old, so he didn't know anybody. But they all accepted me as dad. I was their father. When I married June, first thing I did was adopted all 3 of them, made them all Bakers, which is only a year after I met June that we got married. So the kids were each a year older. Johnny was a year and 2 months. But anyways, I adopted all of them that way. I didn't want nothing to do with Joe, her ex-husband. And in fact, she had divorce going at that time, but back then, if you got divorced, you couldn't get married for a year after. So we had to go to Winter Haven, California to get married, which is just on the outside of the border of Yuma, Arizona. And that's what we did. My parents, my mom and dad and June's mother, we all drove to Winter Haven, California and got married. I would say one of the biggest challenges when they got older, when they're in high school, my kids, they had a good life as far as I'm concerned. I bought things for them for Christmas, and they always had their things. But no, high school was kind of bad. My Joe, he was a good runner. He cross-run. He could run 20 miles with no problem. And in high school, he was really good at running. Teachers even said that he could be in the Olympics because he was that good. Jake really was a good runner. He got mixed up. The only problem is he got to start smoking. Well, you can't run 20 miles very well smoking. Couldn't get him to quit. He kind of got off the smoking, and he got mixed up with marijuana, whatever. It was a big challenge for me. Very good at archery. He'd go deer hunting. He had a real nice friend from the church that did archery. He was really good at it. Taught Jake a lot. But challenging parts, it was mostly that. And when he got older, got married, he married Donna, a young girl. They had a child, but they got split up for some reason or other, and the child got in an accident. Her name was Andrea. Johnny was a little terror. He run around with his school buddies or whatever. He'd get in a little trouble sometimes. Not bad, but he'd jump with garbage cans, which put 13 on me. He almost got across, but he banged up his leg or whatever. He was just he was a little terror. And
Are you proud of Johnny these days?
Johnny, I got him a truck. He was supposed to pay for it, which he did some, but he tried to go across Lake Pleasant in the truck. Is a Toyota. Well, trucks weren't made to go across the lake, even though it was a shallow part, and it just sucked up the water and everything else in the thing. Well, ruined the engine, but anyways, we got a loaner car for him. Put it in my name. Nice little car. I can't remember what. But him and Roger, his friend, they went out and had a few too many drink, and Johnny was driving the loaner car. They were on this road and it had a ditch on it, and he rolled it. After he rolled the car, smashed it up, the loaner car, I know Roger would say, Johnny looked at it and said, did we roll this? They were drunk. He didn't even remember rolling the car. They got out. That car was totaled. He brought it home, and I seen that. And it was in my name, you know. What happened? Of course, they lied to me, you know. They didn't tell me the truth. It's not that they were drinking or nothing like that. It just happened, you know. I mean, we got through that ordeal, but Johnny was a core character. Johnny's doing good. Johnny working for Salt River Project, SRP, and he's been there probably 15 years or so now. So he's doing good. And he's not doing all his little funny things he did. Well, he found out he had to have knee replacement and everything out a few years ago for riding a dirt bike. So he's not doing that so much. So he's growing up. He's in his 50s now. Judy was, she got into trouble. She met this Mexican guy, Samuel Sierra. He was 21, she was 14. It was pretty bad. Anyway, she did get pregnant when she was 14, had Letitia, the granddaughter, my great-granddaughter now. No, she's my granddaughter. I got so many of them I can't count them. Anyways, she had her when she was 15. And I'll be honest with you, I wanted to rip this guy's head off, but June kept me from it. No, he's a good guy. I tell you, Samuel is a very, very special person. He come out of a terrible life, got onto heroin. Judy did leave him and stuff, you know. So, but now he got off. He came to the Lord. Now I'll be honest with you, he hadn't done anything else, but he's like a little preacher now, and he got off his heroin just from prayer and stuff. God did it for him. It wasn't. He didn't go no special school or help to get off it. He just did it himself with the Lord. And but I mean, at the time, I really wanted to take him to court, you know, or take him to put him in prison. But he's growing up, be right. And Judy kind of got into the drugs too, you know. She had her problems. She actually went to prison for it, and she spent a couple years in prison. Excuse me. Thought she was out of it. When she got out of prison, she'd be away from it, but she went back to her old friends and got right back into it. But she got taken back to prison, but this last time she was clean, and she didn't go back with her old friends. And she was very, very good. And Judy died just this last July. But I can say one thing for her: she changed a lot, and she knew the Lord, and that, to me, was the most important thing. You know, kids make mistakes, but I don't feel so bad, you know, if they do die. I know where they're going. Tammy's my daughter, but they're all my kids. I consider them all my kids. I never figured Tammy better than any. I never give her more than the others. She was right, because I took my kids when they were early. You know, I they're a couple years old, you know. They're just my kids. And Tammy, yeah, she is my daughter, all right. And she's always a good girl. Tammy liked things a lot. She wouldn't. She when she was young, she didn't want. She didn't want Kmart stuff, you know. That's why she. I didn't want Kmart shoes. I wanted some other place, you know, more ritzy. And she always kind of lived that way. She got more dominant type men or whatever. But Tammy, she was a lot of fun. She loved her sister Judy. We had a lot of fun with her when she was little. She's a cute little booger. She still is. She's my girl. She's got two wonderful children now. They're of age. Boy, time flies. But, I love Tammy a lot. Now that's about all I got left is Tammy and Johnny. I have Jake, but I don't know where Jake's at. He become homeless. Wanted to be that way, so I let him be that way. And I don't even think he don't know where I live or anything. I'd like to find him sometimes, say hi, you know. Gosh, but I don't know how to find him. My grandkids, I love all of them, and I even got well, I got one great grandchild living with me now because he's going to high school over at our house, plays piano. I taught him how to play piano. Oh gosh, he was probably 7th grade, maybe 6th. Taught him how to play little things that I knew. Now I'm so embarrassed. He plays so much better than me that I don't even play piano around him anymore because he's good. Anthony good. He's a good little artist. He knows how to draw. I can't believe the stuff he draws. And but all my grandkids are great grandkids. They're great. You know, I guess that's why they call them great grandkids because they are great in my eye. You know, and I love all of them. Amber's child, kids, and my words of wisdom to all my kids, grandkids, or grandkids mostly, great grandkids, is get them neutered and spayed when they're born. I'm sorry. You don't have to go through the hardships of great grandfather. No, I'm kidding. I tell you, I don't really know what to tell you to do. Learn in school, and I'll be honest with you, the best thing to do when you get a job and start working on your own or even before, put away some money, save some for your retirement. That's something Grandpa didn't do. I had a lot of grandkids live with me. It took all the money I had to keep everything going. I worked a lot of part-time jobs. I wish I would have had more time with my kids. I really do. But what time I did have with them, I enjoyed. We did things, but I wish I could have put away some money. If you start when you're 20 years old, just put $20 a month in the bank. And you'll be surprised when you put it in the right place. You get retirement age. If there is a retirement Social Security, which hopefully there is, but even if there isn't, you put $20 a month or something. It'd be nicer $20 a week, you know. Just figure it like another tax. Put it away. You work overtime, put your overtime money, if you can do it, you know. Put it away put it in the bank, put it for retirement. And you get out, you could be a millionaire. You really could I wish I could have done it. And I think I could have done it if I would have known more about it, thought about it, you know. Because I worked a lot of years, I made decent money. But then they took away the overtime, and I had a lot of kids and stuff at home, and I had a lot of responsibility. I still think I should have wish I could have put more money away. I had put nothing away, and I got $5 in the savings right now. No, I'm just saying that is one of my biggest things with you kids. You know, try to prepare for later life, and like I said before, love your spouse, or if you happen to get split up, love your next one. You know, there's always, and be happy. Be happy. Don't be sad all the time and grumpy. It just don't pay. Life is a lot better when you're happy than if you're sad all the time. I used to go to work, boss would be in a grumpy mood. It put the whole shop in a grumpy mood. Boss come to work happy, everybody's in a happy mood. And it made the day go quicker and everything nicer. And that's what you need to do when you come home to your wife. You had a hard day's work, try to be happy. Don't try to talk about all your bad, hard problems at work. Be happy. Be happy with your kids. They enjoy. Kids know a lot by how their parents act. Your parents act grumpy and mad and yell at each other. That's what your kids are going to do. You come home happy. I used to come home and Andrea, she'd look at me and smile. She was completely handicapped, paralyzed from the neck down. She'd look up at me and smile, and Dad, you know. And I'd have a bad day, but she'd smile. She didn't know how my day went, but she'd just smile at Dad, and it just made all the difference in the world. I'd go in and say, "Hi, June," you know, instead of being my grumpy self. Learn about God. Learn about how life really. Be happy. If you know you got something to look forward after death, I think you'll be a happier person than if you just stay. I look at, excuse me, you say, well, there ain't a God or something, but I say, what keeps you from, I believed in him. I think you should believe in him for the fact, why not believe in it? If it's not true, okay, you didn't waste anything by believing in him, because if it wasn't true, but believe in God and do right, and why not believe? Like I say, why not believe in him? And if it's true, it's better for you than to say, "Oh, there ain't no God." But there is. God's helped June and me through a lot of things, and that's all I can say is, the more you believe in him, the more things happen to you. Yeah, it ain't going to be perfect all the time, I guarantee you, but it's still there, because in need, you got someone to talk to. So, I love you, kids.
Coucou, les rosiers fleurissent. Coucou, les rameaux verdissent. Coucou, voici le printemps. Coucou, le beau soleil brille. Coucou, et les yeux des filles. Coucou, en font tout autant. Que faites-vous encore à sommeiller? Éveillez-vous, éveillez-vous, le monde est transformé. Coucou, ouvrez-moi bien vite. Coucou, mon cœur vous invite.